50 directors, 60 directors, 3,000 actors, over 100 and 150 producers and executive producers. That means 600 assistant directors, 1,000 secretaries or so, 1,200 technicians and crew and innumerable extras.
Jack Nicholson is one of the most magnetic figures Hollywood has ever produced. With a sly grin, an unmistakable voice, and a knack for playing outsiders, rebels, and troubled geniuses, Nicholson helped define an entire era of American film. From Easy Rider to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, from Chinatown to The Shining, he became both a critical darling and a box office star. With 12 Academy Award nominations and 3 wins, he stands among the most celebrated actors of all time.
Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Recently, a headline claimed Nicholson had named his 6 favorite movies. It sounded juicy, but the truth is, no such official list exists. What does exist, however, are scattered interviews where Nicholson spoke candidly about films and artists he adored, and even one film he openly despised. These moments, though rare, offer fascinating glimpses into his cinematic soul. So instead of a fabricated top 6, we're going to look at the real things Nicholson has said about movies, directors, and performers. From admiring Orson Welles to walking out of Ferris Bueller's Day Off in disgust, these revelations tell us far more about the man behind the legend. Let's count them down. Number 6. Roman Polanski's Cul-de-Sac, 1966. When it comes to Jack Nicholson, surprises are part of the package. He's an actor who spent a lifetime playing men who teetered between charm and menace, humor and madness.
Nah. We borrowed it.
So perhaps it's fitting that the only film he has ever explicitly called his favorite embodies that same combination. In a 2007 interview, Nicholson singled out Roman Polanski's Cul-de-Sac, a dark, absurdist comedy about 2 criminals invading the remote home of an oddball couple. According to Classic Movie Hub, Nicholson said plainly that Cul-de-Sac was his favorite movie, a statement that caught many cinephiles off guard. Why this film? Released in 1966, Cul-de-Sac is one of Polanski's most unsettling works, blending psychological tension with moments of bizarre comedy. The movie follows a bullying gangster and his wounded partner who break into the home of a timid man and his restless wife. What begins as a siege quickly becomes a claustrophobic study of power, humiliation, and role reversals. Polanski places his characters in a crumbling castle on a bleak English coastline, a setting as isolated and eerie as the Overlook Hotel would later be in The Shining. For Nicholson, the attraction makes sense. He built his career portraying characters trapped in extreme situations, pushed to their breaking points. Think of McMurphy goading the system in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Jack Torrance unraveling in Kubrick's Labyrinthine Hotel. Like Cul-de-Sac, these films hinge on the unsettling collision of menace and absurdity. Nicholson saw in Polanski's work the same qualities he sought in his own performances: unpredictability, psychological gamesmanship, and humor born of cruelty. The choice also underscores Nicholson's cinephile credentials. Instead of picking a classic crowd-pleaser, he named a relatively obscure, bleak little film that demands patience and a taste for discomfort. It's the pick of someone who values cinematic daring over mainstream appeal.
Get up, you waters! It's time!
It's time? Let me use my electric razor.
I told you it tears my flesh.
A reminder that Nicholson, despite his star persona, always gravitated toward risk-taking. There's also a personal connection. Nicholson and Polanski were friends for years and worked together on Chinatown, 1974, perhaps Nicholson's greatest film. Chinatown likewise explores themes of domination, betrayal, and the rot beneath respectable facades. In praising Cul-de-Sac, Nicholson was also nodding to an artist whose sensibilities helped shape one of his own definitive performances. So, when Nicholson finally dropped the curtain and revealed a personal favorite, it wasn't Casablanca or The Godfather. It was Roman Polanski's bleak, off-kilter chamber piece. That choice speaks volumes about Nicholson the cinephile. Rebellious, unpredictable, and always chasing the strange electricity between laughter and terror. Does Nicholson's love for such a bleak, unsettling movie surprise you? Or does it make perfect sense for the man who gave us Jack Torrance's crazed grin? Number 5. Admiring Orson Welles.
The more virgin our eyes are, the more we have to say. The most detestable habit in all modern cinema is the homage.
When Jack Nicholson was asked about his cinematic influences, he didn't list dozens of names or hedge with vague platitudes. According to Dennis McDougal's biography, Nicholson specifically singled out Orson Welles as one of his all-time favorite directors. That choice reveals more than admiration. It signals kinship. Welles was the ultimate Hollywood rebel, a man who burst onto the scene with Citizen Kane at just 25 and then spent the rest of his career battling studios, bucking conventions, and insisting on making films his way. For Nicholson, who carved out his own legacy as Hollywood's devil-may-care icon, Welles was a natural touchstone. Welles' Citizen Kane is often called the greatest film ever made, but what mattered to Nicholson wasn't just the technical brilliance, it was the audacity. Welles played by nobody's rules, inventing deep focus shots, overlapping dialogue, and stark lighting that redefined American cinema. Nicholson's own career mirrored that defiance. When he rose to fame in the late 1960s, he too was swimming against the tide, becoming a star without conventional leading man looks, using his eccentricity and sharpness as strengths. Nicholson has often described himself as an outsider, someone who never fully bought into Hollywood's phoniness. That's exactly how Welles operated, too. Welles was as famous for his clashes with studios as he was for his genius, and Nicholson, who spent decades turning down roles that didn't inspire him, clearly respected that stubbornness. In Welles's uncompromising independence, Nicholson saw the artistic courage he valued most. There's also an aesthetic connection. Nicholson's greatest roles, Jake Gittes in Chinatown, Jack Torrance in The Shining, R.P. McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, are larger-than-life figures, just as Welles's Charles Foster Kane or his Shakespearean characters loom over their films. Both men embrace characters who were tragic, flawed, and grandiose. For Nicholson, admiring Welles was like admiring a spiritual predecessor, a showman who wasn't afraid of theatricality, but could still deliver piercing truths about human frailty. Welles, of course, struggled financially and professionally in later years, often reduced to commercials and unfinished projects. But for Nicholson, even that decline might have reinforced the mythos. Welles never played it safe, and his legend endures precisely because he refused to compromise. For an actor who built a career on bold choices, that kind of defiance was worth celebrating. Do you think Nicholson admired Welles more for his genius on screen or for his sheer refusal to play by Hollywood's rules? Number 4. Inspired by Akira Kurosawa. When Dennis McDougal profiled Jack Nicholson in his biography, one detail stood out. Alongside Orson Welles and John Ford, Nicholson named Akira Kurosawa as one of his all-time favorite directors. For many cinephiles, Kurosawa represents the epitome of artistic mastery, a filmmaker whose command of rhythm, atmosphere, and human drama transcended borders. For Nicholson, whose career blossomed in the new Hollywood era of the late 1960s and 1970s, Kurosawa's films were proof that cinema could be grand, philosophical, and uncompromising all at once. Kurosawa's Seven Samurai alone could have influenced an entire generation of actors. The film's rain-drenched battle sequences, its exploration of honor and sacrifice, and its ability to blend intimacy with spectacle made it timeless. Nicholson admired exactly that balance, The way Kurosawa could zoom in on the face of a grieving villager one moment and then orchestrate a massive, sweeping battle scene the next. In his own performances, Nicholson sought a similar balance, toggling between the smallest flickers of emotion and explosive, scene-stealing gestures. Kurosawa was also a director unafraid of moral ambiguity, something Nicholson himself thrived on. In Rashomon, Kurosawa shattered narrative certainty by showing the same event from conflicting perspectives. The film forced audiences to accept that truth is slippery, a theme that echoed through Nicholson's greatest roles. In Chinatown, Jake Gittes tries to piece together a mystery where everyone lies and nothing makes sense. In The Shining, Jack Torrance's descent into madness blurs the line between supernatural forces and human weakness. Kurosawa's commitment to exploring uncertainty clearly resonated with Nicholson's love for complex, morally gray characters. Another reason Nicholson respected Kurosawa was his sheer perseverance. Kurosawa often fought battles with Japanese studios that mirrored the struggles Welles and Ford endured in Hollywood. He made long, expensive films, resisted compromise, and demanded artistic freedom even when it nearly destroyed his career. Nicholson, who often turned down lucrative roles he didn't believe in, must have admired that level of conviction. To Nicholson, Kurosawa wasn't just a director. He was an uncompromising artist, the kind of figure who validated the notion that cinema was worth fighting for. Finally, there's the global reach of Kurosawa's influence. Hollywood remade Seven Samurai as The Magnificent Seven, borrowed heavily from Yojimbo for Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, and studied Akira as a model for humanist storytelling. Nicholson, as a man who straddled the line between art and commerce, likely saw Kurosawa as proof that deeply personal films could also captivate global audiences. By including Kurosawa in his personal pantheon, Nicholson aligned himself with a tradition of bold philosophical cinema. It revealed that beneath the devilish grin and the bad boy persona was an artist deeply attuned to the global masters of the craft. Do you think Nicholson's admiration for Kurosawa came mainly from the epic scale of his films, or from the moral ambiguity that mirrored the roles Nicholson himself loved to play? Number 3. Respect for John Ford. Jack Nicholson has always been drawn to cinematic rebels, directors who refused to compromise, who carved out their vision even when studios balked. That's why, when asked about his favorite filmmakers, he included John Ford alongside Orson Welles and Akira Kurosawa. To some, Ford may seem like the odd one out. He wasn't known for experimental camera tricks like Welles or philosophical puzzles like Kurosawa. Instead, Ford built his reputation on westerns, Stagecoach, The Searchers, My Darling Clementine, films steeped in American myth-making. But for Nicholson, Ford's greatness wasn't about genre. It was about uncompromising devotion to a personal vision. Ford's films are instantly recognizable. Monument Valley's sweeping desert vistas, the stoic cowboys confronting moral dilemmas, the deliberate pacing that let landscapes and silences speak as loudly as dialogue, all of these became Ford's signatures. Nicholson, whose own screen persona was defined by individuality, clearly admired Ford's ability to bend an entire genre to his will. Just as Ford transformed the Western into something grander and more poetic, Nicholson often transformed supporting roles into unforgettable performances that stole the spotlight. Another point of connection is Ford's treatment of outsiders. In The Searchers, John Wayne plays a man haunted by prejudice and vengeance, unable to fit into the civilized world around him. Nicholson often played similarly alienated figures, men on the margins of society, battling demons within themselves. From McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to the Drifter in 5 Easy Pieces, Nicholson embodied characters who didn't quite belong. Watching Ford's conflicted heroes must have felt like discovering cinematic ancestors. Ford was also a director who despised pretense. He was notoriously gruff on set, often dismissing actors with curt instructions. In that way, he was the opposite of Hollywood phoniness, exactly the quality Nicholson himself despised in phony industry players. Ford valued authenticity, and Nicholson, who cultivated his own reputation for bluntness and independence, likely recognized a kindred spirit. Finally, Nicholson admired Ford for his longevity and consistency. Over a career spanning 50 years and more than 140 films, Ford remained true to his themes of honor, community, and personal integrity. Nicholson, though far less prolific, also built a career defined by consistency of character. No matter how wild or unhinged his performances became, there was always a moral undercurrent, a seriousness beneath the grin. Ford's unwavering artistic compass provided a model for Nicholson's own devotion to being true to himself. Do you think Nicholson admired Ford more for the mythic landscapes he created, or for his portrayal of flawed outsiders that mirrored Nicholson's own roles? Number 2. Idolizing Bette Davis. When it comes to acting idols, Jack Nicholson has been surprisingly consistent. While many stars avoid naming a single favorite performer, Nicholson has openly declared Bette Davis to be his personal favorite actor of all time. Not just his favorite actress, but his favorite performer, period.
Rosa, you got back all right?
I got back.
How's your foot?
Fine. What a dump.
That revelation is telling. Davis, one of Hollywood's most uncompromising talents, was known for playing complicated, difficult women. Characters who demanded attention and never faded politely into the background. For Nicholson, who built a career on similarly fearless portrayals, Davis represented the gold standard. Nicholson once recalled a piece of advice from Davis that shaped his philosophy. You play the same part over and over again, that's how you get to be a movie star. On the surface, that might sound cynical, but Nicholson understood the deeper meaning. Davis wasn't advocating laziness. She was pointing to the importance of cultivating a persona that audiences could instantly recognize. Nicholson took that lesson to heart. Whether he was playing a rebellious patient, a haunted writer, or a sinister joker, there was always that glimmer of Nicholson, a thread of consistency that kept his work magnetic. Like Davis, Nicholson gravitated toward roles that were unapologetically flawed. Davis dazzled in films like All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, where her characters were sharp-tongued, insecure, or outright cruel. Nicholson brought similar qualities to life in roles such as Randall McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or the manipulative Melvin Udall in As Good as It Gets. Both actors understood that audiences don't only want to watch likable people, they want to watch human beings at their most raw and vulnerable. Another reason Nicholson singled out Davis was her defiance of Hollywood's gender norms.
And I said to the director of the test, what have my legs got to do whether I have talent or not? But he said, well, they want to see your legs. So I remember very, very well. I would pull my dress up, just this much, see, half an inch at a time. And they'd say, keep going. And I'd keep pulling it up and up till finally, you know, I got it to my knees. But I was very Boston, Puritan, modest girl, believe me. So anyway, they got the test of my legs back. But Goldwyn did not take me. As a matter of fact, he is quoted as saying when he saw my test, who did this to me?
At a time when many actresses were pigeonholed into playing the dutiful wife or the romantic interest, Davis fought for substantial parts. She even sued Warner Brothers in the 1930s for better roles, a move that nearly ended her career but ultimately cemented her reputation as an artist unwilling to settle. Nicholson, who often clashed with Hollywood expectations himself, likely saw Davis as a kindred spirit, someone who prioritized artistic truth over career convenience. Nicholson's respect also extended to Davis's sheer presence. He once said that she was the kind of actor who could dominate a scene without saying a word, simply by the way she held herself. Nicholson, with his famous grin and piercing eyes, cultivated the same ability. In many ways, Davis's career became a roadmap for Nicholson's. Be bold, be unforgettable, and don't shy away from characters who make audiences uncomfortable. By naming Bette Davis as his favorite, Nicholson aligned himself with a tradition of actors who reject safety in favor of risk. It reveals that behind his bad boy image was a performer who measured himself against one of cinema's greatest trailblazers. Do you think Nicholson connected with Davis more because of her fearless career choices, or because her performances mirrored the kind of bold, unlikable characters he loved to play? Number 1. A movie he hated? Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986. For most of his career, Jack Nicholson avoided throwing shade at other people's work. He preferred to keep the spotlight on his own performances or the directors he admired. But in 1986, he made a rare exception. After attending a screening of John Hughes's teen comedy Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Nicholson walked away feeling deflated, even threatened. In an interview with the New York Times, reported by UPI, he admitted the film left him feeling totally irrelevant to anything that any audience could want, and 119 years old. That wasn't just mild dislike, it was an existential crisis triggered by a high school comedy. The film itself was a lighthearted romp about a charming teenager who skipped school for a day of mischief in Chicago. Audiences adored it, and it quickly became one of the defining teen movies of the 1980s. But for Nicholson, then in his late 40s, it represented a generational shift in Hollywood. Suddenly, movies weren't about complicated anti-heroes or morally gray rebels. They were about quick-witted kids with no responsibilities. Nicholson confessed that after watching Matthew Broderick's Carefree Ferris, he literally thought, "My days are numbered. These people are trying to kill me." It's a striking reaction, especially considering Nicholson's own reputation as Hollywood's eternal rebel. For decades, he had played the outsider who challenged authority, whether it was McMurphy sparking a revolution in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Jack Torrance battling ghosts and his own madness in The Shining. Yet, here was a new kind of rebel, young, smirking, and suburban, stealing the spotlight with a wink and a grin. To Nicholson, it must have felt like a torch was being passed, and he wasn't ready to let go. This reaction also highlights Nicholson's sensitivity to cultural shifts. He wasn't just dismissing Ferris Bueller as bad. He was recognizing that audiences were changing, and that scared him. Teen comedies and youth-driven stories were exploding at the box office in the 1980s, while the gritty adult dramas that made Nicholson a star were losing traction. His words reveal a rare moment of insecurity from a man usually brimming with confidence. Ironically, Nicholson didn't need to worry. He went on to star in Batman 1989 as the Joker, a performance so flamboyant it redefined comic book villains, and earned him one of the biggest paychecks in Hollywood history. While Ferris Bueller may have rattled him, Nicholson quickly proved he still had the charisma to dominate an ever-changing industry. Still, his candid dismissal of Hughes's comedy remains a fascinating glimpse into his psyche. Even the great Jack Nicholson could feel out of step with the times, undone not by a rival actor, but by a cheeky teenager cutting class. Do you think Nicholson's harsh reaction to Ferris Bueller's Day Off was really about the film itself, or about his fear that Hollywood's youth movement was leaving him behind? By naming Roman Polanski's Cul-de-Sac as his favorite film, Nicholson showed his appreciation for unsettling stories that blur comedy and menace. His admiration for Orson Welles, Akira Kurosawa, and John Ford revealed his respect for uncompromising visionaries who shaped cinema across cultures and generations. His devotion to Bette Davis proved that he measured himself against trailblazers who defied expectations and embraced difficult roles. Together, these fragments create a mosaic of Nicholson's cinematic soul. They tell us that behind the grin and the sunglasses was a man who valued risk, authenticity, and artistry above all else. So, as we reflect on Nicholson's real favorites and his one infamous dismissal, one question lingers. Which of his own performances will stand the test of time as your favorite? Is it his anarchic R.P. McMurphy, his haunted Jack Torrance, his sly Joker, or another role entirely? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of Hollywood legends.